There's nothing more irritating than getting stuck at a specific revenue point, right? And I find that the sticking point always comes around the 10 to 20K months for so many coaches, maybe you. And I want to go over reasons why you're stuck and how to come out of that plateau. So we're going to go over reasons one by one, talking about why the issue is there and how to overcome them, right? So as we're going through these problems, I want you to take note of what you can relate to in your business and why these issues are happening, okay? And there's going to be a few common themes throughout this episode, right? But understanding the problem is the only way to solve it, okay? And we're gonna jump right in with the first problem being there is absolutely too much change in your business. So, when you first jump in to maybe a mentorship, right? There's all this encouragement to make a bunch of changes and to totally revamp many of your processes, and that's awesome. The problem comes when that doesn't stop. And maybe you have no guidance, okay? Think about it like this. Whenever you're looking at your business and you're constantly looking for ways to improve it, there's a difference between wanting to improve your business and just being addicted to chaos, right? There's a difference between upgrading your client experience and constantly just having chaos in your business run your life, having that emotional reaction to everything. And so when I talk about too many changes happening too fast, this is often an internal thing. It's not guidance, right? It's not coming from somebody encouraging you to make these changes. It's actually coming from within, and that chaos addiction, right? Wanting a lot of things to move really quickly. And I am somebody that loves fast action, absolutely love it. But there are ebbs and flows, just like when you're driving down the street, right? There's stop signs, there's stoplights, there has to be some give and take and ebbs and flows in how hard you're pressing that gas pedal. Otherwise, you are going to burn out and you are going to lose sight of that long game. So when I talk about too much change, it's this expectation for results instantly, or this constant search for like, what is next? What could be better, right? And again, I'm very obsessed with my business, and I think many of you can probably relate to that, right? Like, we love what we're building. We want to build something amazing. But if you're lacking structure, or you're lacking strategy, or you're lacking a timeline, right? And I don't mean 0 to a million in X time frame. I mean just a timeline of what needs to happen chronologically in your business, okay? If you're showing up every day with a to-do list over here, a brain dump over here, it's gonna be really chaotic. Again, coming back to that chaos addiction, right? Your chaos addiction is exactly why you are burning out right around that 10K to 20K mark. And maybe you haven't identified that yet, right? And so here it is. This could be the problem, right? And I see this oftentimes too, where we hit this 10K month, okay? And then all of a sudden a client will tell me, I wanna have a group program. And I say, we just got to 10K, right? So instead of doing the same things to get to 20K, we all of a sudden think that there's some magical solution out there that needs to be totally different. And like, here's where I tell you, if you had to do something totally different every $10,000, oh my gosh, we would all be, first of all, absolutely not. Like, I've been doing the same things over and over and over and over again for 4 years. And that's not the answer anyone wants to hear. But like, that's true. Yes, things change in marketing. Yes, there might be changes in my team members. But overall, I've had the same 2 offers for 2 years. Like, nothing's changing. And nothing's coming out new this year. Like, that's just how it is. So I want you to think about just how many changes you're making too quickly, okay? This also comes into play for those of you who maybe hired too quickly, whether it was your idea or a mentor's idea, but to bring in a VA and then a DM person and then an assistant coach and all these things, and you're barely making enough money. And at the end of the day, after you've paid your mentor, paid your team, there's no money going into your account. And yes, profit margins are not going to be great at the beginning of your business. They're just not, right? Like, you do have to outsource. I'm 1,000% on board with that. But if you're constantly having turnover or hiring your friend to do DMs because they happen to be around or whatever, and there's not intentionality, then it's going to be chaotic, right? All swimming back to that one original point, but too much change. This could go in any direction, okay? So ask yourself right now how much change you're making. And I didn't start with this in this podcast, but I do want to say, my business has had several plateaus, and I do have podcasts on this. There are 3 big plateaus for me. The first plateau was 10K months. It was because I got to 10K months and I had no one on my team. I was overworking myself. All I was thinking about was the next dollar. I mean, truly, I was hyper fixated on money because my business started from scarcity, right? Yes, I was very passionate and am very passionate about health and fitness, but me starting my business was, yes, impact. But at the time, I had a dire need to make money fast because I was going to lose everything, right? When you get laid off, you're going to lose everything. I didn't have a couch to fall back on or a spare bedroom to sleep in. It was all on me. And so when I think back to that, I got to 10K and it was like my mindset was the same. I was still thinking I got to keep going, got to keep hustling, hustle. And urgency is great, okay? We need urgency. But I lost sight of the vision of why I did all of this. And so, I just remember getting stuck there. And it wasn't because I was making too many changes. It was because I needed to make a change. I needed to make some adjustments. And so for me, that first sticking point, what really helped me come over that was to bring in a VA, to take off the payment, the support, the contracts, the graphics, those little things. That was a major sticking point for me because I couldn't do it all, right? So that was the first sticking point. And so I really relate to this plateau because for me, I was bouncing between, 10K, 15K months for probably, I don't know, maybe 6 months before I really got out of it. And so that was the first thing, right? Okay, back into what's going on. So another problem could be lack of boundaries. So if you still have notifications on, okay, and you are getting pulled into client messages on Saturdays or, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. or whenever it is, there is a problem. Also, if you're getting text messages from your client, that is a problem. Now, before you tell me you're old school and you still do sales calls with your phone number, let's stop doing that. But this is where I tell you, those boundaries are going to come back full circle at some point. Okay. So whenever you take the time to give boundaries to yourself and understand that boundaries are not holding you back, they're pushing you forward. There was this mindset that even I had where if I wasn't, how can I charge this much money? Which it wasn't much at all. How can I charge this much money if my clients can't have access to me all the time, right? I felt like a bad coach and I felt, right? That's the thing. I was creating this codependency. I was creating this idea that, you could reach me anytime, like I was a hotline. And so when I made that boundary saying, hey, from now on, I will be responding to messages within one business day between, 9 and 5, Monday through Friday. My clients respected the hell out of that. Not a single person had a complaint because there is no business that operates 24/7. There just isn't. That's not a thing. And so it doesn't matter who you work with, whether it's a mentor or whatever, ask yourself, do you have expectations that somebody you hire is available 24/7? Unless you are irrational, the answer is no, right? You don't expect that from anyone else. And so you're actually not doing them a favor. You're really creating that codependency, right? You're going to be there when they mess up. You're going to be there when they need you, but you're not expected to respond in 30 seconds, okay? Or even an hour. And so what I would suggest is that you remove those notifications, take them off. You're never going to forget to check your email or Voxer or WhatsApp or Trainerize or whatever you're using, okay? You're going to be doing that. But when you are working on a project that really needs your attention, right? And you see that notification come in, right? We live in such a reactive society, right? Where notifications for everything are everywhere. And because of that, we have built this reactive nature and it's really hard for us. And so when you see those messages coming in, you're going to answer it immediately. And what does that do? It pulls you away from your zone of genius. thus prevents you from scaling, right? Because it's diminishing your efficiency. So if you haven't set up those boundaries, and there's a million ways to do this, I would encourage you, send an email to your clients, let them know that effective X date, this is going to be the communication guideline. And if you have clients that are still texting you, just move them off. That's it. Move them off to an app. I use Voxer, but there's a million things you could use. So start there. This next one, big, and you probably heard me say this a million times, okay? But one of the reasons you are stuck at 10 to 20K months is because your messaging is so generic, it is so vague. And I have this conversation with coaches all the time. I really want to start doing functional coaching, and I'm afraid to talk about it, right? And those same coaches are also posting, 5 ways to get more protein in your diet, and I'm thinking, where is the disconnect between what you want and where you want to go? That's just a very simple example. If your messaging is generic and looks like everyone else on the internet, you therefore are going to blend in and you're not going to stand out to anyone. Therefore, you will not make any sales. Now, generic content, it can get you to 10K months. I won't say that it won't, because that's another problem. When some of my clients will say, well, I've been doing this and I've had 10K months. I've got here before. Okay, great, right? New business opens up, shiny new thing, followers see that, yay, woohoo. Same thing for my clients who have a really large following. It's the same concept, right? Which we'll go into that in a second. But, your messaging and branding cannot be generic. So this is where you have to create a content strategy. And we're not going to go into that in this podcast. I do have content episodes, tons of them. Seriously, I have so many episodes on content, what to post, how to sell, all those things. But to summarize it, you need to be inspiring, educating, and teaching at all times, and just be a thought leader, right? And, the way that I really created authority so quickly is I would go live all the time. When no one was listening, I would just go live, and it wasn't like a scheduled thing. I would just pop up and go live and pop up and have a conversation, and maybe it was 5 minutes, maybe it was 10 minutes, maybe I was cooking my dinner, talking about my day, but that's how I was building authority with my audience. And so often we are looking at these other coaches who are leaps and bounds beyond us thinking, I should do what they're doing, or how did they land a sale with one post? And we're forgetting that maybe that one post did land multiple sales, but that coach who's making $1 million did all of the other boring crap every single day for years and years. And you can't skip that. You can't skip the boring stuff, right? Like, you have to build an audience. So if you see a coach talking about how, and I say this stuff too, right? How I had an amazing launch, and, I've had $700,000 launches multiple times, but I've also had a $2,000 launch, which was not what I wanted. I've also had those problems, okay? I've had workshops where, 7 people showed up live and I made no sales, and I've also made 50K from a workshop, but those were years apart, right? It just takes you repetition, and don't lose sight of that repetition. So if you have not created a content strategy, please do so. The easiest way to start is just figure out what are the problems you are best at solving and how can you solve those problems. Now, going back to the large following and quick success, this is a big point. I do see this time and time again. If you have a large following, okay? And I'm talking, at least 30K, even 20K, whatever, but like a large following, okay? It is likely that you probably had some quick success, and that is luck, okay? And I'm not discrediting anything that you did or your services, but it's just how it is, right? If you have a large following, you've got a bigger audience, more likely to follow you, more likely to buy whatever you're selling. And so I usually see a correlation between quick success and my coaches with a large following. What happens is that you never developed a content strategy because you didn't have to. You never developed a DM strategy because you didn't have to. People came to you. Therefore, when a coach hops into my coaching container and I'm saying, okay, well, why are we not DMing? Why do we have no strategy? Well, I didn't have to. Okay, cool. So that's always a really fun conversation. But my point is, if you had quick success, that is luck. Luck does not scale you. So you could be somebody who is having to learn a lot of these concepts late in the game, and that's not a bad thing. It just means you have some learning to do and have some adjusting to do. And, there's not like a missing link. But I will also say, those of you that have high engagement and have a large following, there's so many strategies you can try, right? Try doing a live workshop. try going live and selling on your story, right? Try doing fast action bonuses like that. Try like a 2-step post, right? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's where you'll see somebody say, I've got 5 spots for women who want to do blank without blank, DM me, start to learn more, whatever. Like those are 2-step posts. And a lot of you can basically say jump and somebody will say how high, right? And so if you have this massive following that is really engaged with you, loves you, they've got so much respect for you, then you may not need to go the route of find X amount of sources per day, right? You've got the sources in your ecosystem. It's just about utilizing those sources. And so that is one problem that I see, right? Usually my coaches that have had quick success, they are plateaued around the 10 to 20. I don't see many people that are plateaued much higher than that. So that's where I would start, okay? Now, next up is no vision. So when I get a coach who jumps in and they don't know where their business wants to go, right? That's the first thing that we work on together. So when you're thinking about vision, okay, I do not need you to have a full-blown 5 or 10-year plan ready to go, but I do expect you to know if you want to have a massive assistant coaching team, if you want to build a signature offer, if you want to, have just nothing but passive income, like those ideas, those goals, that is how we will scale your business together, right? Because the last thing I want to do, or any of your coaches want to do, is scale a business you hate, right? That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make your life easier. But I cannot create the vision for you. And nor do I want to, because again, I don't want you to build a business you hate. So, take some time to kind of think about what your future looks like in 2 years, what your lifestyle looks like, what services you're offering, maybe who's on your team. Are you doing guest speaking events? Are you, what does that look like? And that's where we kind of work to build. And it's hard to think about it, right? It is hard to build that idea. And I don't think it's going to be easy, but if all you can focus on is making money, that's not a vision, right? A vision is not 7 figures. A vision is not 30K months. That's just an idea, right? What are the objectives along the way? But that vision is going to be so helpful. And typically my coaches that are plateaued at any level, not just 10 to 20, I've got coaches that are plateaued at 30K, coaches that are plateaued at 50K, and every single one of those plateaus lacks vision, right? Yes, there might be certain projects we're working on where revenue is not the primary focus. But my point is, generally speaking, if a coach is wondering why the hell is my income not increasing, there's a lack of vision there. Another one, SOPs and KPIs are only acronyms you've heard of. If that is you, if I'm speaking to you right now, then I know you're plateaued somewhere. So when you think about KPIs, okay, I've got a podcast all on this, but I want you to think about what could you track in your business that's going to give you data you need to better serve you, okay? I would think about sales. I would think about client retention, profit and loss. I would think about revenue. Those are the main ones, okay? Now, depending on your team, which if you're between 10 and 20K, you shouldn't really have a big team right now. Maybe it's a VA or somebody in your DMs. But we need to know some basic metrics for just the projections of the business. Like you should know how much revenue you have contracted for the rest of the year. You should know your close rate. You should know how much time it takes for a cold lead to eventually close. You should know how many leads you're bringing in every single day. Those are things that you need to know. And then SOPs, if you bring somebody into your business, how do you teach them that? Do you have anything built out? Do you have an SOP for your onboarding? An SOP for how you find leads? An SOP for, there's a million examples, right? And at this level, there's probably not a ton of SOPs, but just little things like onboarding and offboarding a client will be so helpful for when you bring in a VA. Those are really simple, right? Or if you're trying to bring in an assistant coach, right? How do you onboard? That's a different way. That's not like a systems onboarding. That's like what are your first steps with coaching them, right? How do you get them acclimated into the culture, into the team, okay? But not tracking KPIs is not an option, right? Because every single time we have a problem, we need to know why. It needs to come back to data, okay? This one may hit a little bit, but you don't hate your current situation enough to make a change. I have conversations with my clients on this all the time. It is not something that I shy away from, okay? You don't hate your current situation enough to make a change. When I started my business, I hated my life, okay? And I'm not exaggerating. I hated my work environment. I hated just the thought that I would be working for somebody forever. And I'm not talking about my friends or my personal life, but I hated the fact that I didn't have a personal life because of my job. I hated my pay. I hated how much I worked for little payoff, right? I was so freaking determined. And then I was laid off and I hated it even more. And some of you are too comfortable in your comfort zone. Some of you are too comfortable in your current situation. You may not like it, right? But something isn't motivating you enough to make a change, right? And I'll even use this in my health and fitness journey. I remember when my body started rapidly gaining weight. Now, if I look back really, really hard into the 2 years prior, I remember my body, I had such a hard time losing weight, such a hard time, and I just thought it was me. I knew internally there was something wrong, but I looked good and I, for the most part, felt fine. I could drink coffee late at night and still go to sleep. I thought that was just a, personality trait, right? Until my body said, we can't ignore this anymore. You're gonna gain a lot of weight really fast and you're gonna wake up. And that's what I did. And it wasn't until that moment that I backed off, that I stepped away from the stage, that I didn't diet, that I changed up my entire diet, right? And I use that example because it's the same thing with your business. Even if you're not totally uncomfortable, you're too comfortable to make massive changes. I also see this happen with my coaches who are around 10K months, 20K months. They've hit this point in their business and they're thinking, okay, all right, I can breathe a little bit. And then revenue starts to dip. You got too comfortable, right? So if you have any, I know reverse motivation is, some people hate it, some people love it, but pretty much everything in my life that has been a positive change has stemmed from anger or resentment or something like that, right? Or trauma, sadness, and I channel that into something better, right? So this is going to be some personal development for you, but think about just what you want, right? Is this lifestyle that you have right now actually what you want? And if you're okay getting the paycheck and, I want to build a business, but I'm okay getting a paycheck, you're not going to build the business. Something has to be uncomfortable enough for you to make a change. Last thing, I want to talk about mentorship. And no, I'm not just going to say hire a mentor, okay? But there is no way in hell I would be where I'm at if I did not have a mentor. And I want to chat about just the times where your mentorship may feel boring, okay? I want to normalize the phases of mentorship that feel boring. Because as somebody who's had a mentor for 3 years, not every day is wild and crazy and life-changing. The experience as a whole is life-changing. But if I were to, switch coaches every 6 months and all of that, there's no way my business would be here. If I were to panic every time I felt like I was in a maintenance phase, I wouldn't be here. And so this kind of goes back to that chaos addiction, because when you first hire a mentor, it is shiny, you have all those quick dopamine hits, there is a lot of things that are changing, you're getting some results, yay! And then what happens? A few months in, you start to ghost. You start to stall. And then you look around panicking like something is wrong when really nothing is wrong, okay? There's just not chaos. We've gotten through that storm. And that's when the mentorship really begins, right? That's when you get to build that relationship and that connection with your coach, okay? If I could have 3-month contracts, I 1000% would, but I think everyone would panic, and so I don't. But if my coach were to give me a 3-year contract, I would be like, heck yeah, let's go. I don't care, because I've committed to the long haul. And there are going to be ebbs and flows. I don't do 6-month contracts for a reason. I do 1-year contracts because 360 days goes by in the blink of an eye. 4 quarters fly by, right? And so whenever you're thinking about finding a mentor, right, I want you to know that there's going to be ebbs and flows. Not every part of that mentorship needs to be wild and crazy. A lot of it is just making sure things are going according to plan, right? You shouldn't wait until you have a million questions and your business is on fire to get a mentor. And on the other side of that, you shouldn't just cancel your mentor because your business isn't on fire anymore, right? Because again, it goes back to that chaos addiction, all these changes. Every time you hire a new mentor, the first 60 days at least are them getting acclimated to your business, your coaching style. You're both getting acclimated to each other, right? Like it's not an easy process, right? Like it's a human to human connection, right? And I value long-term relationships and long-term partners. And there's a reason that my clients re-sign and are with me for 2-3 years because they value that as well, right? And so if you haven't found that mentor and you're looking, then stay on that journey because your person is out there, whoever it is. But if you are also coach hopping every 6 months, then you're constantly starting over with someone new and going through that cycle again, and therefore not really getting anywhere. So when you look at all these reasons, I hope that you can find a few reasons why you are stuck at 10 to 20K months and that you have exactly what you need to move forward. So just remember, these plateaus do not last, but the rate of scale is different for every single business. Give yourself a business audit. Take some time. Make sure you have days that you're working on your business, not inside of your business. You do need days like that. Take some time and restructure your calendar, right? For example, if you are most productive in the morning, then don't book your client calls then. That's your time to work on your business, to do projects, to do whatever you need to. Maybe you have a call with your mentor and then save the second half of the day for coaching calls and things like that, right? If you have coaching calls every single day, that's also not effective, right? So there's so many little tweaks that we can make. And if you have any questions, you can always shoot me a DM. I'm always happy to answer those and give you some feedback on what I would think, what I would do in your business. But we will stop it there. So I'm hoping that you can find 1 or 2 things and implement those this week and get over that revenue plateau.